Hi everyone, Rukshan here, and thanks for joining me for another episode of In Case You Missed It, an end of the week roundup of some of the news stories that I didn't manage to cover, and of course, you may have missed them as well. First up, we have this story, a saga that doesn't seem to go away in our country, and that, of course, is the story of the alleged rape of Brittany Higgins, the involvement of the Labour Party, the Liberal Party, the involvement of the media, and so on. There are so many angles on this story and so many ways that it's being covered. Sometimes we lose track. Now, the most recent news that's come out is the debunking of a persistent conspiracy involving what happened after the alleged rape in Senator Reynolds' office. Now, this revolves around the story that this office, the couch, all of this kind of stuff that was alleged to have been the place of the incident was steam cleaned and sterilized by the cleaners because, of course, this whole massive conspiracy around a cover-up. Now, last couple of weeks, we've been looking at Katie Gallagher, the Labour Minister, and whether she misled Parliament because of her prior knowledge through her relationship with Brittany Higgins and her boyfriend, David Shiraz. And that almost amounted to nothing, even though it was very clear that she did indeed mislead Parliament just based off the statements that she made. That went nowhere. And what we're finding now is still this trickling down of information related to this issue of Brittany Higgins and this alleged rape that seems to cast doubt on the way that this issue was covered by politicians as well as the media. Now, I don't want to go into anything to do with Lisa Wilkinson because that is a whole drama in and of itself. Let's just have a look at this story and see what was debunked. Higgins office rape cover-up conspiracy debunked. In the Brittany Higgins saga, a sensational lie took hold early on, suggesting morally bankrupt and criminal behavior at the most senior levels of politics. Now we know what the cleaner found. There is a maxim that the first lie wins, none more so than in Brittany Higgins saga. At the center of this long-running drama, amid the twists and turns, a sensational lie took hold early on. Just as deadly bushfires can ignite when a tiny cigarette butt is thrown into dry grass, the political cover-up claimed in the Higgins story were fueled by an explosive spark, an anonymous lie that the office of the then Defence Industry Minister Linda Reynolds was steam cleaned to remove evidence after the alleged rape of Higgins by Bruce Lehrmann on March 23, 2019. Lehrmann has always maintained his innocence. The steam cleaning allegation suggested morally bankrupt and criminal behaviour at the most senior levels of Australian politics. It turned an allegation of rape into a political scandal, the likes of which the country had never seen before. The claim was a lie, but it would stick. Even after numerous investigations proved it was entirely false, even today, many still believe a ministerial office was steam cleaned to cover up an alleged rape. Now, if you spend any time online, especially on a platform like Twitter, you will see all the people that are piling on the Liberal Party. They will say that they steam cleaned the office. It was a massive cover-up, and these people are completely dodgy. Now, I'm not one to give politicians a free pass, but plenty of evidence pointed to the fact that this never happened. And we're keep on seeing more and more confirmation of this, but this lie never lets up. Let's have a look at what the cleaner actually found. The AFP would later find that during its own review that no one had any reason to suspect a potential sexual assault had occurred in Reynolds' office. Late-night drinks were not uncommon in parliamentary offices. Special cleans were ordered to ensure that an MP, let alone a minister, would not arrive to a leftover mess and dregs of an office party. Except there was no mess in Reynolds' office on March 23, 2019. The office was so clean that Carlos Ramos, the cleaner brought in to clean the office, called his boss the afternoon to check he was in the right office. His boss at the contract cleaning company then called a DPS staff member to check. I just want to confirm with you, it's M123, Senator Reynolds' suite. Yes, says in audio evidence that formed part of the police brief of evidence. It's just that the room's not exactly what we were expecting, so I want to make sure we were in the right room. Ramos was in the right room. Had a police investigation into the rape alleged proceeded in 2019 and Ramos had been questioned back then, the steam clean claim would have been quickly revealed as false. But Higgins chose not to proceed with the investigation until after the project interview and Madden's news report. The steam clean conspiracy would live on, sitting side by side with Higgins' claim that there was an attempt to cover up the rape allegation. Now, I don't want to go over this entire saga and this whole story all over again. Most recently, of course, Brittany Higgins, who was awarded an undisclosed figure that we haven't really found out exactly what that figure was. We're hearing reports of up to $3 million. Now, that's been disputed, but we do know there has been a settlement claim, which is largely secret. A part of that claim was the fact that the evidence put forward in that claim was Brittany Higgins was suffering all sorts of consequences because of what happened, and potentially would not be able to gain employment or work because of the circumstances that she has gone through. Now, we know since then Brittany Higgins is working, and here she is in her new gig at the UN. So a lot of people are raising their eyebrows at this, saying that, well, she's gotten this massive payout. It's all undisclosed. Now she's working at the UN, and people are upset about this. Now, personally, I think with these type of claims and the way that they're processed, sometimes it's likely that someone may never work again, and sometimes they may get the courage to work again. These things happen. But of course, the circumstances surrounding this whole saga and all the nonsense back and forth and all the politicizing of it makes people very suspicious when they see these type of stories, and the way that Brittany Higgins has potentially benefited from this, which is the claim that's being alleged by some people. Now, of course, herself and others that support her claim otherwise and cheer her on for moving on with her life. What do you guys think? I'm just going to read a bit of this report here. Brittany Higgins reveals a stunning new role at the United Nations in Paris. Has revealed a recent new role at the devoted to ending discrimination against women. As the ex-political staffer confirms rumors that she and fiancé David Shiraz recently jetted overseas for an extended trip. The former Liberal staffer on Friday shared a series of photos of herself posing outside Palais des Nations, the United Nations Conference Center in Geneva, Switzerland, honored to intern at this year's United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, Miss Higgins wrote. The images show Miss Higgins standing in front of the gates of the International Peace Organization's headquarters in Switzerland in a variety of outfits as she attended the 3-week conference in May. Her wardrobe choices included a baby pink suit, a blazer matched with Gucci-style high heels. A similarly designed shoe costs $1,000 in Australia. After this story was published, Miss Higgins posted a message exchange on her Instagram story revealing the Gucci shoes belonged to her mother, Callie. There she is with her Gucci shoes. Look, this story is not going to go away. I think the best thing that can happen in this instance and in this scenario is for the details of this payout to be made public for transparency reasons, for there to be a full accounting of how all this went down, and potentially even some type of hearing, which doesn't necessarily have to involve Miss Higgins or her partner or anything like this, just the government people and media people that were involved, because the way that this whole saga, the conspiracy has unfolded, it is a blight that will continue to exist unless these issues are resolved. Now to a story that would delight Klaus Schwab, no doubt. Maybe not as delightful as he would be if people were eating crickets and bugs, but at least we are closer to having lab-grown meats become a staple and a normal part of our supermarket run. That's right. That's how the world is shifting towards these things. I'm going to quickly play this clip from CNN and discussing lab-grown chicken. Americans prepare to taste lab-grown chicken. Let's have a look at this video.
All right, it is chicken, technically, but not as we know it. You're looking at food that actually came from cells from a chicken rather than the chicken itself. Now, the US has given 2 firms the green light or permission to start producing lab-grown chicken products. They're called Upside Foods and Good Meat. The cells are grown with the help of nutrients like amino acids in massive bioreactors. As you can see, it kind of looks like a brewery. And Upside Foods chicken is already on one restaurant menu in San Francisco. Uma Valetti is the CEO.
So yeah, not quite crickets, but even, I think probably even worse, this genetically made lab-grown chicken. I don't think I want to eat this lab-grown chicken. I'm happy to eat the normal farm-raised chickens. I don't want this lab-grown crap. And of course, this stuff is also coming to Australia. Lab-produced meat could be on Australian supermarket shelves as soon as next year. Would you pay $5 for a lab-grown hamburger? You might get the chance if a plan to have cultured meat on Australian shelves as soon as next year becomes a reality. The National Food Standards Body is assessing an application from a luxury cultivated meat company, while others are watching to see how things shake out. This follows the U.S. Agriculture Department's approval for California-based firm Upside Foods and Good Meat to sell chicken meat labeled as lab-grown or cell-cultivated. Now, many red flags go off for me with this type of thing. I don't think we should be normalizing this, if at all, having this type of produce. Well, it's not even produce either. It's genetically modified. What the hell is this? I'm just happy with normal farm-grown chicken. This move towards these lab things is very, very distressing. Anyway, what do you guys think? Would you eat the lab-grown chicken? Now, speaking of chickens, we did have a by-election recently in Fadden, in Queensland. And of course, the Liberal Party and Labor Party were put up against each other to see what would pan out and whether this particular by-election would be a bellwether for how the country was feeling, of course, on issues like cost of living, the voice to parliament vote, and so on. Now, this is a predominantly safe Liberal seat, and they have, of course, held on with a small swing of, I think, 2.5% at the moment towards them. Now, a lot has been made of this, and a lot of downplaying has been done. There's been a lot of scrutiny of this, saying that the Liberals spent, $600,000 on what should be a safe seat. Some people have said, well, this shows you that people are worried about cost of living and that the Liberals are getting an advantage now in terms of, the mood of the country is changing, at least in Queensland. And this might be a bellwether for what we're about to see in the voice to parliament vote. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but of course, this is a recent victory by the Liberal Party after a long time where they've got some sort of momentum. And of course, the media is mainly trying to downplay it. But speaking of the voice to parliament, of course, that continues on. And this is a story from last week that I didn't get a chance to cover. But I found it really interesting to show you the dynamics of how Indigenous communities, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, sometimes are conflicting in terms of who has rights over what and all this type of thing. Now, I'm not going to explain too much, but listen to this story if you haven't heard this before and let me know what you think of this.
Good evening. The opening of a freeway extension in our northern suburbs came to an abrupt halt when an argument broke out over who had the right to conduct the traditional smoking ceremony. The ribbon cutting on the $232 million project had to wait while traditional owners faced off.
But I don't need these people coming out here thinking that you fellas could say this, say that on this land.
It was an uncomfortable moment for the minister, caught up in a turf war among First Nations people.
I don't need permission of you or anybody else. Neither do I. This is my country too.
A traditional smoking ceremony going up in smoke after competing Aboriginal groups fired up at each other.
I thought you fellas was from Mora. Well, you thought wrong. No.
What do you make of this, Minister?
Oh, it's very interesting because obviously there's a lot of different Aboriginal groups with history in this area. So, yeah.
Did you pick the wrong one for the smoking ceremony?
No, I understand that was all handled by the department. So, anyway, we'll work through it.
Other Aboriginal elders stepping in.
And you're included in this, all right? So,
well, it doesn't seem like
it is.
Anyway, complete and utter shambles there. And it was so hilarious watching the minister being questioned about, did you pick the right Aboriginal group to conduct this smoking ceremony? And look, this goes many ways to illustrating and demonstrating the divisions that we're seeing already between Indigenous communities on this voice referendum vote and the future divisions that we're going to see on these issues. I don't see how an advisory body made up of this, a hand-picked group of people, or however they're planning to do it, will come to the right decisions that will make all these different facets of Indigenous communities pleased with what's happening. People are going to get left behind. This is just another layer of bureaucracy. That is why I firmly still believe that the best case scenario for Australia is, as not imperfect as it is, that we all as individuals, whether we're Indigenous, Aboriginal, migrants, or Australians in terms of settlers in this country, that we all face these issues together as one, and we are treated equally as one, and there is no type of divisions or distinctions made between race and so on in our founding document. Regardless of how this is portrayed, this advisory body will be a ethnic, racial-based group. I, as a Australian of Sri Lankan heritage, cannot be a part of this particular advisory group, The Voice. So it is distinctly based around racial lines. And this demonstrates exactly the issues that we might face in the future. Those are my thoughts. What do you guys think? Now I'm jumping around again to another story from America, and actually it's got roots in Australia as well, because some of these strikes which are happening in Hollywood, I don't know if you've heard about it. The media keep talking about the Hollywood strikes. It's the most important strikes, most likely, that we've ever come across in modern history. And of course, how do you feel about the Hollywood strike? Now, as someone who lived through the nonsense that happened over the last couple of years in Australia, I distinctly remember that these Hollywood types, whether it's the celebrities, of course, but also the film crews, and just in general the industry, had lots of different privileges that ordinary folk in our country, in Australia, did not have during that time. So when I measure my sympathy for the current issues that Hollywood is facing, and this strike and these issues with AI and not being paid enough and all this stuff, all of that, the sensitivities to that issue is measured against how I saw Hollywood being put on a pedestal during times when, you and I could not attend funerals. If we wanted to fly into Australia, if we were stuck overseas, wanted to come back home because our family members were ill or dying, or we had to go see a child that was dying in another state, there were many barriers put in between us and doing that. It was almost impossible. Regularly, we had stories of people being denied the ability to do this. I also remember very distinctly, like multiple occasions when people were in extreme lockdown, there were Hollywood movies being filmed throughout Australia. Like that was a thing that was happening. And one of the reasons that were given was that a lot of investments had been made in these projects by obviously the studios. There's government entanglements in all of that with the incentives that they give. But at the same time, mom and dad businesses, family-owned businesses who have invested years into their livelihoods, their businesses, were forced to shut down and close. And some of those businesses never recovered. So in light of remembering all of these things and the special rights that a lot of celebrities had to fly into our countries and do what they like while we had to be locked in. And remember that during this whole time, Hollywood did not stand up for the average everyday person. 99.9% of them participated in the government propaganda. They told people the government messaging. They didn't critically think and share their dissent of any of these things that were happening to ordinary people. They went lockstep with what the government was doing. So when I read this article now, remember all of that, okay? SAG strike. Actors join writers on Hollywood picket lines. Actors will not appear in films or even promote movies during this stoppage. Major films in production, including the Avatar and Gladiator sequels, may be affected by this shutdown. The actors are joining writers who walked on in May, concerned about pay, working conditions, and the industry's use of artificial intelligence. Brian Cox, the lead actor on HBO Succession, told the BBC the strike could last until the end of the year. The whole streaming thing has shifted the paradigm. The Scottish actor told BBC Newscast, they are trying to freeze us out and beat us into the ground because there's a lot of money to be made in streaming, and the desire is not to share it with the writers or the performers. Talks for a new contract with studios and streaming giants broke down on Thursday, with Screen Actors Guild accusing the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers of being unwilling to offer a fair deal. About 160,000 performers stopped working at midnight, joining the 11,500 members of the Writers Guild of America, who walked out on the 2nd of May. By noon on Friday, union members and their supporters had gathered outside the offices of major studios and streaming services in Los Angeles, New York, and other cities. So look, they're on picket lines. You've got actors rocking up to these picket lines. And I get it. A lot of Hollywood, even though the face of it that we see are these big name celebrities, a lot of Hollywood is actually the backbone of it. It is workers, these different people who are involved in this, like even extras. And they might get a rough deal compared to the elites of Hollywood. I'm sympathetic to that just a little bit as a person who is considerate of workers' rights. But as an industry as a whole, these people are now finding out what it's like for the rest of us last couple of years. And this whole thing with AI and the movement of AI into Hollywood, yes, these are things that many industries are facing, not just Hollywood. Now, Hollywood is complaining that AI might, you have an extra who's an actor, they'll come in for one scene, and then their faces will be digitized by AI and added into the other background scenes, so they have less work. Okay, make rules and laws around that, or different policies around that people want to work towards that. But I think the general population, the general public, is sick of Hollywood, is sick of their virtue signaling, right? Is sick of all their woke propaganda that they participate in, right? AI could probably very easily duplicate what Hollywood puts out right now, because the artistic, creative, and the value of all of those things have been completely stripped back. Movies are so hollow. They're it's about diversity picks. It's about taking a really good movie sometimes and then putting in a new character who's like, a colored character, and that's the new movie. Like, this is the kind of nonsense that these people are engaging in. And it's no wonder that the general public does not give a crap about their strike. I really don't care about this strike. And, of all the other issues in Hollywood to do with pedophilia, and of course, we saw how they treated the movie Sound of Freedom. I talked about that last week. With all those issues combined, and that's just a general ambience and feeling that permeates from Hollywood, it is not a place that I would, take up arms for and, make a video saying, how dare they treating the people of Hollywood like this. They need to look at this and see how the general public's reacting to this, and possibly make more changes about how they communicate with the public, and maybe start making movies or maybe TV series or all these things which actually, are welcomed by the public, in the sense of taking in on the feedback that people are giving them. Like, how many years have we been giving these Hollywood studios our feedback, even just basically through ticket sales, by rejecting certain movies, but they will not let up on pushing their woke virtue signaling agendas down our throats. So yeah, hopefully they sort this out, but I am not losing sleep over the strike in Hollywood. And speaking about woke virtue signaling, this recent poll found that misgendering should be a crime, according to millennials. Yes, that's right. If they had their way, our e-safety commissioner and these anti-vilification laws that are coming into Australia, if they fully had their way, which is still possible, misgendering should be a crime, according to millennials. Let's have a read of these articles. More millennials think that referring to a transgender person by the wrong pronouns should be a criminal offense than think it should be legal, according to new polling conducted exclusively for Newsweek. According to the survey by Redfield and Wilton Strategies, 44% of those aged 25 to 34 think referring to someone by the wrong gender pronoun, he, him, she, her, should be a criminal offense, versus just 31% who disagree. The remainder neither agree nor disagree or don't know. This review remains popular for those aged 35 to 44, among whom 38% think that misgendering should be illegal, whilst 35% disagree and 26% either don't know or don't express an opinion. The rights of transgender people whose gender identity doesn't match the sex they were given at birth, and the corresponding impact on women's rights has developed into a hot political issue across the United States. Republican-controlled states have passed a string of laws impacting transgender people, such as banning sex change operations and hormone treatments for minors. Now, of course, we have seen over the last couple of months, last couple of years, this has become a very highly debated topic, right? With tensions rising depending on which side you're on. And this latest survey shows that there are people within the population, particularly the younger generations, who would welcome such things as making misgendering illegal. Can you think about it? Just if you use the wrong, you might not know if it's she, he, they, them, whatever it is, but you might use the wrong pronoun, and that in itself could be viewed as being illegal. I think it's very problematic, and it just shows you the way that a lot of this is actually, I blame Hollywood for. So that's why I'm not very sympathetic to their cause right now with the strike. this is where the world is headed because of all of that, in my opinion. Now, as I promised last week, I'd be looking more and more into the US elections, which are coming up next year. And of course, we have the primary style discussions and debates coming up in the US for the Republican Party, at least. But before I get to some of that, I want to show you this video of this very creepy old man. I heard that he's the president of the United States of America, and I'm hearing that there's plenty of other creepy videos of him. This is the most recent one from Europe where he is, I don't know what this creep, Joe Biden, is attempting to do to this poor little infant. I do not know what he's trying to do, but it looks like he's trying to eat them, which is just sick, considering all the other weird stuff that we have seen him do around children. It's one thing for parents and family members to be playful with their kids, but as soon as you start going towards strangers' children's and behaving in this manner, I think it's a bit bloody weird. But look, let's move on from Joe Biden. I don't want to waste any time on him. I'm sure we'll have another video of Joe Biden to look at next week where he's making people feel uncomfortable. Now, recently, Tucker Carlson had a town hall style thing where you had a lot of the Republican primary candidates who've put their hand up to go up against Donald Trump, potentially discussing their vision for their candidacy with Tucker Carlson. And there was one particular interaction with Tucker Carlson and the former vice president under Donald Trump, Mike Pence. That was very telling. Now, of course, this video has been cut down, but I think just the fact that he gave this answer has ended his chances completely. And I'm just going to play this clip, and it goes to maybe a lot of the politicians who speak in this manner about their own country, whether it's in Australia or in the United States of America, where we're seeing this crop of politicians arise where the issues seem to be elsewhere, right? Albanese is also guilty of this. They're never really concerned about the cost of living pressures in Australia. It always seems like they're handing out hundreds of millions of dollars in aid and weapons and so on to other countries, while people in our country, in Australia, or in this case in America, are suffering because of all of these things which are happening, right? So let's have a look at this video interaction between Tucker Carlson and Mike Pence.
I think it's a fair question to ask, like, where's the concern for the United States in that?
Well, it's not my concern. Tucker, I've heard that routine from you before, but that's not my concern.
Now, he did go on to answer this and provide more detail in terms of what he thinks of this. But the fact that he said, that is not my concern, he repeated it twice. Now, that is almost political suicide to use those type of words, because that can be misconstrued in so many different ways. But it's very clear that, considering everything that we know, we can say that politicians, when they look at these issues, they're not concerned about it, right? They're not concerned about the ordinary lives of people in Australia or in America. They're finding other issues overseas. So what do you think? Is this guy, Mike Pence, who many call a traitor, is his time done, and should he just drop out of the race because he's already polling pretty badly anyway? And if you get a chance, look up Tucker, look up his other interviews that he did that day. He went through them, and a lot of them did struggle to actually stick up to Tucker in terms of answering basic questions. Another one of my favorite topics, of course, is the climate crazies. And here we have more examples of people, the public, this time in Europe somewhere, stepping in to deal with these climate warriors who like to disrupt traffic, sit in front of cars, in front of trucks, and members of the public must come out now and move them out of the way, because we've seen police are very inactive in doing this type of activity when they're doing these protests. Now, in Australia, of course, we've discussed new laws by some of the states trying to tackle this by increasing jail terms or stopping people from protesting certain things in a certain way if it's deemed dangerous. Now, I have maintained my stance that I am against further government intrusion into these areas. But of course, police should be doing the most basic things in terms of removing people and these kind of obstacles from the way, instead of trying to find people and stuff. Just the basic things that you're seeing these people doing. Because what ends up happening is, this is another video from Europe. I'm going to play this because this is hilarious. This is the consequences. This is the consequences of their actions. This is when they glue themselves to the roads, right, to the pavements and so forth. They glue themselves. I'm just going to zoom up on this just so we can see it a little bit bigger and enjoy this a little bit more. Let's have a look at the pain and suffering of these climate activists.
Ich bin nicht mal an seinem Finger und das macht er mit Absicht, aufmerksam. Überhaupt keinen Scheiß. Gucken Sie mal, Jungs. Ja, aber das kann schon passieren. Ihr tut es zum Beispiel auch. Ja, also da ist halt spannend.
Look, I don't want to laugh at people's pain and suffering, but these guys have gone there. They've glued themselves with all sorts of very strong glue type materials onto these, gravel or whatever, and it's hardened up. So the firefighters have come. This looks like it's in Germany from the language. They've come. They're trying to chisel their hands out, and of course that's causing them some type of discomfort, and they're screaming about it now. Like, if this is the price that you want to pay for your activism and this is what you want to do, then I think you got to deal with the consequences instead of complaining about it. I mean, these people are getting a reality check right now, so I have very little sympathy. But, we're not seeing this level of protest from the Hollywood folks yet. So, I mean, would you want to see some actors potentially glue themselves to some Hollywood studios? That might be quite entertaining. It's no secret that one of my most favorite topics over the last couple of weeks has been watching Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk go at it with their threads and Instagram and Twitter rivalry. And of course, we had our mainstream media in Australia, especially the ABC and all the other networks, actually jump on threads and be like, oh, this is just amazing. 100 million users. They're growing so fast. It's the end of Twitter. End of Twitter, right? Massive. But, people like me who are watching this, who are more switched on and tuned into what's going on here, it was obvious this 100 million users were just Instagram users being transferred over to Threads. Well, what's happened since then? Not even a week. I think it's actually a week that's passed since Threads came out. Their engagement on the app has dropped dramatically. It is like a ghost town, particularly when it comes to political commentary or just that kind of interaction on social issues. The interactions there on Threads has dropped, right? They are struggling already. I'm just going to read this article from Engadget. NBC News reports that data from the Census Tower and SimilarWeb indicates that the newly released social media platform from Meta has seen a drop-off in attention from users. Senior Tower suggests that on Tuesday and Wednesday, daily active users dropped 20% from Saturday, while time spent on the platform fell 50% from 20 minutes to 10 minutes. SimilarWeb's data reportedly paints a picture equally as grim, as daily active users dropped 25% from peak on July 7th to Monday, while time spent on the app dropped over 50% from 20 minutes to 8 minutes. So look, I'm not going to read the rest of this, but you get the picture. Threads is almost done. I'm very close to deleting this app. I haven't deleted it yet because I still want to investigate and see what people are talking about on Threads. But if you go on there, it is a hodgepodge of nonsense. And I'm glad that I'm still stuck around on Twitter. But of course, the ABC is very promising on Threads. This is their most recent article from yesterday. Threads users looking for a genuine connection as Twitter-like social media platform goes back to basics. ABC would love for Threads to kick off, but I think they're going to have to find their way crawling back, particularly with some of their reporters, crawling back to the promised land of Twitter. That's right. And of course, this ABC, they're going to be worried about this as well. Threads already has a hate speech problem, civil rights groups warn. Threads is not going to be immune to any of these things that these people are talking about. The only thing that's happening on Threads that is maybe a benefit to these media companies is that Mark Zuckerberg is going to be very heavy on censorship. And when I say censorship, it's not around censoring hate speech, which is already prevalent on Threads. It is around censoring narrative-related topics. So, an opposing view, for instance, on issues of trans rights. Those type of topics might be heavily censored. That's about it. Now, if you've stuck around on in case you missed it for this long, this next story you'll really enjoy. And that is, of course, Victoria Police begging the public, members of previous members, perhaps that they've gotten rid of, and new recruits to the Victorian Police Force, begging them to come back, saying that they'll even take you if you're unvaccinated. Now, this is the same Victoria Police that would bash in doors and arrest people and shut down protests and beat people up because they weren't following the mandates. That same Victoria Police are now saying that unvaccinated people are welcome on their force. And that is, of course, because they are struggling. They are struggling in such an immense way with issues with recruitment, because no one really wants to join the police anymore in our country, in Australia. Now, why would you think that would be? I think it's because of the way that the police have been used by the state government over the last couple of years to enact and enforce all types of draconian nonsense. And it's not a very attractive career anymore, right? Now they've fully dropped their standards. So let's have a look at this recruitment email that was sent out. And this was some intel I received from someone that has received this email that I verified. And, you know, this particular person went to sign up for the Victoria Police back in 2019, I believe. So since that time, they've kept all these records and they're just sending out this mass campaign to try to boost their numbers. So the email that they received said, "This is an exciting one-off opportunity to speak to recruitment experts and discuss any concerns you may have. Want a sneak peek at the changes. For eligible applicants, the following may apply. Exemption from the entrance exam for those with a relevant Australian university bachelor's degree, arts, science, humanities, or business within the last 5 years." So yeah, if you've got an arts degree, you don't have to take the entrance exam because that's enough now. That's how desperate these guys are. The initial psychological assessment can now be done online. Well, that sounds great. Let's do the psychological assessment of people that are going to be potentially, police members carrying weapons and all sorts of things. Let's do that assessment online now. The video interview component has been removed. Evidence of COVID-19 vaccination is no longer required, and your exam score is valid for 3 years, fast-tracking your next application. These changes will result in a significant decrease in the time taken for the recruitment process, with applications taking as little as 4 to 6 months. Now, I've talked to some other police officers and I've read a few comments and discussions online. And a lot of them say that there was a time when Victoria Police, to get into Victoria Police was so difficult. There were so many people lighting up in terms of trying to become police officers. And if you look at that today, here, what's happened to the police force under Shane Patton, who is the Commissioner of Police, who I believe should step down, should face consequences and should be held accountable to the public for some of the decisions that he was a part of. Until that happens, I think we're never going to get closure on what's happened in our state over the last couple of years. But can you see the changes which has happened, how desperate Victoria Police has become? It is just in your face, and you can see the desperation in these type of recruitment processes. And I don't think in the long term, having police of low quality because they're so desperate is actually good for the community. We should want police officers who are of a high standard, who meet the same standards that were a few years ago, not these dropped standards. I mean, it's just insane. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that the deadline for companies to store actual employee data as it relates to COVID vaccinations is coming up. So they will no longer be able to store some of this data. So a lot of these things are being wound back and rolled back. And we've also had instances of nurses, this is from Rebecca Barnett, who shared this, nurses getting messages like this. These are nurses that were, I guess, effectively sacked or let go from their jobs for not participating in the vaccine mandates. These are the emails messages they're getting now from their previous employees. "We are pleased to announce that in response to statewide changes, we will no longer require the COVID-19 vaccine for employment effective July 7th, 2023. With that, we would like to extend you a warm invitation to rejoin us on our journey forward." Yes, we screwed you over. We kicked you out of your jobs. We destroyed your life. We made it hard for you to put food on the table for your family. But now the government has dropped all this stuff. We welcome you to join us on this journey going forward. How can you trust these places? Like, these places have no integrity, no honor. A lot of these unions, we're talking about Hollywood before, a lot of these unions that are, were missing in action. The police unions were missing in action, the nurses unions, the teachers unions. Where were they when people were losing their jobs? Right now that we know like a lot of this stuff was nonsense and made, crap all difference to the outcomes that we're seeing today, because we still have COVID in the community. We still have people turning up to hospital and all this kind of stuff. We're still there. If you watch the news, they're still talking about it. Like, what impact did any of these mandates really honestly have that it destroyed people's lives like this? And now they're putting out this kind of crap. Come on, complete nonsense. But this blew my mind, because while police and most teachers now exempt from vax mandate, Fire Rescue Victoria maintains them. Unvaccinated firefighters at Fire Rescue Victoria will remain off work after declared COVID vaccine mandates would remain in place. Unvaccinated firefighters will remain off work indefinitely after Fire Rescue Victoria declared its COVID-19 vaccine mandate will stay in place. Complete and utter nonsense. Where is this science coming from? Why this difference? Why are we having this disparities, right? We have the police dropping them, teachers dropping them, almost all other industries dropping them, and this bloke, this organization at the Fire Rescue Victoria are keeping them for their members. Crazy stuff. All of this stuff is still unresolved, and it continues to blow my mind. Anyway, guys, that wraps it up for this week's episode of In Case You Missed It. If you're enjoying what I'm doing, you can, of course, follow along on YouTube, Threads, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Rumble, Odyssey. I don't know why I said Threads. I'm going to have to remove Threads soon. But there's so many social media apps, but you can find me at The Real Rukshan. And, of course, you can look for my name, Rukshan Fernando. See you guys next week.